Blow, blow, blow till I hear the breath of the Spirit blowing in me.
Hello, welcome to Spirit of Life. My name is Geraldine Lee, your host, and our guest is Michael Ballek. He's a social worker and life coach. He was on the program last week and has come back to join us. Hello, Michael, welcome back.
Thank you, Geraldine. It's good to be back with you.
Last week you shared so inspiringly about your journey of faith and life coaching. I'd like to find out more about life coaching. Could you tell us more?
Well, life coaching is something I'm pretty passionate about, and it's a fairly new area of work in the world, and quite a small area as well. So I'll give some statistics to put it into perspective a bit. There's currently they estimate around 47,000 life coaches in the world. That's the whole world. So, and that's compared to, say, in the United States alone, there's 600,000 social workers and
Wow.
more psychologists, more counsellors. So it's a profession of people calling themselves life coaches who are working with clients in a bit of a different way from these other professions. And there's a federation, an international federation of coaching now, and it's become a profession with courses and with accreditation and with a code of ethics. So the International Coach Federation is like a peak body, and that's been around for about 20 years, and it's really only in the last 20, 30 years or so that life coaching has come into its own as an area of work, and so people are starting to hear about it more, but it's still quite small. And it would be described as a process of a life coach partnering with a client in a bit of a thought-provoking and creative process to help them to focus on goals and outcomes they have and to really get good outcomes in their life. That's basically the essence of what it is.
Wow. And what's got it more popular, do you think?
Well, I think it's like a lot of those things in the personal development field has become more popular in recent times. It's generally more prevalent in Western countries and higher income countries. And I suppose as people are looking to make the most of their life and are finding that within modern life there can be struggles and can be pressures, and people can get a bit distracted from what their sense of purpose is, or they can feel torn in many different directions. So a lot of people will turn to coaches to help them to both discover what their strengths are and what they really want to be doing in their life, but also how to be doing that with people, how to communicate better, how to bring more of their passion into what they're doing. And it doesn't mean that they have necessarily problems that they would need to go and see a counsellor for or a doctor for. It can be people who are otherwise functioning really well in life, but are just finding that they're stuck with a particular thing. And that's often where they'll seek out a coach, is just to help them to get through that little area and learn a bit more about themselves along the way. So it's quite an exciting process.
And you were coached yourself. Is that how you decided to become a coach?
Yeah, I'd been interested in it for a long time because I've been a social worker for a long time, and as I was saying in the last program, I've sort of worked with people in various areas of suffering and pain and in social work, and so through that I'd learned about this modality of life coaching, which is about helping people to find hope and to find really good outcomes. So I really became interested in that, and the positive movement of positive psychology, and I did a bit of reading around that area, and then I went and had some coaching and did a course myself around 15 years ago, and then was able to see the power of that and the empowerment that gave to clients as well as me as the coach. Because one of the really interesting things about coaching is that for the life coach or the practitioner, it can be a very energizing process as well, because what you're doing is you're helping a person connect with their sense of their own motivation, and just by asking lots of great questions and lots of appreciation of what they're doing and setting up a space whereby they can explore that's actually quite energizing and joyful the practitioner. So I often come away feeling, really inspired and hopeful as well.
When you were a client yourself, you felt...
Yeah, when I'm a client and also when I've been coaching. And that's actually really enjoyable. It's a different sort of experience from what it can often be like as a counsellor or as a a social worker, or where you're dealing with people in a different way.
And is it also different from mentoring, life coaching?
Yeah, I'd say probably the characteristics of coaching is that the client is seen as the expert of their life. And our job as a coach is to ask questions and to help them to bring out what it is that they are really wanting, and some ways they can go about that. Mentoring can be one where there's generally a person who's a bit more advanced in a particular field of work, and they have a bit of expert status. So they're offering guidance to the person generally about how to do things or how to work with their career. So the coach isn't an expert or isn't seen as the one who is, leading the person along. It's about helping the person to really find their own direction. I see it as a bit like, the wind underneath the wings in a sense, and you're travelling with the person through the journey, but supporting them to make their own changes and to also really appreciate that as they go along. And I think too, people often say, well, what's the difference between that and counselling as well? And counselling again can be, because I've had both counselling as a client, and I've also been doing it as a practitioner. And again, there are elements that are very similar, and I've been able to bring elements of counselling into coaching and vice versa. So, but I think with counselling it can be a bit more like people are coming often for healing in some nature, or some sense of hurt or some sense of past stuff. That's it's about going into that and exploring it a bit more. And often in counselling is involved in very therapeutic relationships where there's cases of mental illness or distress or trauma, whereas coaching doesn't, I suppose, deal with those areas as much. So people who wouldn't identify as having any sort of traumas or anything to deal with can benefit from coaching in the way they can then help to get through a particular challenge in their life.
Yeah, it's great to hear about life coaching. We need to go for a break now. You're watching Spirit of Life. Stay with us and we'll be back in a few minutes. Hello, welcome back to Spirit of Life. My name is Geraldine Lee, your host, and our guest is Michael Ballek, who's a life coach and a social worker. Hi, Michael. You've been sharing about life coaching, and I know that you have a faith in God, and how do you apply that faith in life coaching?
Well, obviously not all the people I'd coach did have faith in God, and that's okay, because it's not about faith primarily, but in a sense there is a real synergy between the two, because coaching is about setting up a space where a person can be asked questions and go through a process of inquiry to find out how they can really move forward in challenges they've got in life, and to do that in a way of appreciation and a way of recognising what their strengths are. And I think one of the fundamental things about faith and us believing that we're on a journey through our life is noticing that we do have strengths, we do have abilities that we've been given by God, we do have gifts, and sometimes we need to go through a bit of inquiry and a bit of them being brought out by others, and that can be done sometimes through questioning and calling. And the concept of vocation is really calling us from perhaps a situation where we're a bit fearful or a bit hemmed in by our concerns or our self-doubts, to the point where we can then take a step in faith. So I see coaching as it's a step in faith in becoming a person that really God is wanting us to be and to feel free to emerge into. And often we can be a bit hemmed back by our own concerns and fears. I'll give an example of a client I was working with once, and he was he had something to do at work, and he was finding that he was getting very put down by other people, and he wasn't able to, I suppose, to show his strengths. He wanted to be able to say, I've been working on this proposal, and which would actually be quite good for the organisation, but he really felt quite constrained in his ability to do that, partly through language. He felt his English wasn't good enough, and he felt his work wasn't good enough. So in a way, part of the coaching process for him was getting him to really recognise what his strengths were in the situation, and by asking him to then look at where, how he could express that and how that could be appreciated in a way. And that was a real faith thing. It took faith in himself and his abilities and his awareness that he could do something bigger than what he'd done. And that's what we actually went through, and he was then able to go and do a presentation and show it to people, and that it could be seen as something, and that then lifted up his awareness of himself. So he became more of the person that can be an influencer in the world for good. So coaching can be a way of us almost, I often call it sort of getting out of our own way in a sense. It's about looking at the fears or the rigidities that we might have built up over a period of time, and it's almost like looking at how they can be shed away if they're not serving us anymore. And I think that's part of what faith is calling us to do as well, to go and grow through the situations we have in life.
So as being a coach, you need to have faith in your client?
You've got to have faith in your client, and faith in the process of growth, and faith in the fact that we'll come through it. You need faith in yourself, of course, as being able to be of a service to the client, but also faith in what the person has, because you really have to have a liking for the person and what they bring, knowing that they're a wonderful person. They've got all these strengths, they've got all these abilities, and it's like, they've got all this potential. So we come with that, the coaches come with that, and then hopefully over the coaching journey, the client can then appreciate that and start to take that on.
Yes. Have you been at times where you've felt a bit despairing and wondered and needed to call on God or something for faith in a situation?
Yep, I think there's been times when I've had to really, if I've had situations with clients where I've found them quite difficult or quite, I'm getting stuck in that pain or in that suffering, or times when I've felt I haven't really been adequate for the task. I've felt I haven't done a good session, or I haven't really served them. But the funny thing is, it's often in those times that we have been of service. And having faith, sometimes it's about taking the focus off me as the coach. I've got to think, well, it's not about me, it's about the person and what they went through. And often we don't know how growthful that's been for the other person. I had a session where I was talking to a lady, and I thought I'd really botched it up. I hadn't moved anywhere, but she said to me, no, that was great. It was, we came to this sort of understanding. It's allowed me to work with this and to really have these insights. And I wasn't aware of that. So, and I think we don't know really the impact we do have on other people.
Yeah, so and that's faith, where you're struggling as the professional, and yet good comes out of it when you can't even see it.
Yeah, sometimes when you both let go, when we sort of surrender ourselves to the process. And coaching has lots of strategies and models and and processes to go through. So there are a lot of things that can be supplied, but sometimes sometimes the most important thing is just to join the person in where they are and to accompany them through what they're going through.
Yeah, that's powerful to actually, and it's also makes you, in a sense, vulnerable or full of faith, because sometimes with counselling, it's like one person stays the expert and the other one feels like a bit of a victim. And there are also many types of coaching.
Yeah, well, you obviously heard about sports coaching, which is one area where athletics coach will work with an athlete and they'll look at ironing out their imperfections and about getting them to strive more. That's one area. Life coaching similar to that, but we tend to focus more on the strengths than on the weaknesses. And business coaching would be another area which is focused a bit more on someone's performance in a workplace and how they can be more effective. But often even in that scenario, it often comes back to helping the people to, make advances in their own life, and because we're all human before anything else. So even business people are human. And
yes. Before you go into too much detail, we need to go for a break.
Mm-hmm.
You're watching Spirit of Life. We'll be back after a few minutes. Hello, welcome back to Spirit of Life. My name is Geraldine Lee, your host, and our guest is Michael Ballek. He's a life coach and a social worker. Welcome back, Michael.
Thank you.
It's been great how you've been sharing about life coaching and the different types. Is there more that you'd like to say about the different types?
Yeah, I think we've said that there's life coach and business coaches are probably the two largest specialties, but coaches can be really found, pardon me, in any area of life. So there can be relationship coaches, weight loss coaches, coaches working from a Christian perspective particularly, or coaches to help people with careers or guidance. There's coaches working with children now, and Tina helping parenting. So really any area of life, young parents, older people, or the midlife area, which is a particular interest of mine. So often coaches you will find that will tend to specialise in a particular niche and say that that's the area that they've got some expertise and some interest in, just like in a similar way to, say, not all doctors work as general practitioners, some are working as specialists. But probably all coaches would have in common, or well-trained ones who abide by the codes of ethics and have been through an approved course, would be able to work with people in a fairly similar way.
And how would people find more information about life coaches?
Certainly there are, that they can go to websites or to look around. It's not one of those things where there are many people putting signs on doors. By driving around the suburbs, you won't often see many people saying you're a life coach. Tend to be found online more, and I can give a link at the end of the program to where people can find out more about that.
Great.
And in terms of, would it help if I talked a bit about what happens in a life coaching session?
Yeah, that would be great.
Relationship. Yeah. Okay. Well, often, that they do vary, of course, depending on what the issues are that are being discussed. But generally, a person would come in, and for a session might be anything, half an hour to an hour, and it might be that they'll come in and they'll talk a bit about what their current situation is. There'll be a bit of time to connect and to tune in to where the person's at, because it's really important to know what's happening at the moment. Then the coach will often ask, okay, what are we working on today? What do you want to deal with? What are the challenges at the moment? And then the client will then describe that, and then they'll describe where they want to go, where they want to be. And they'll then be able to say, okay, what's the gap from from where you are now to where you want to go? And then they might look at some strategies that'll help to get that in place. And often, again, it's about noticing the strengths that the person's using, helping them by asking lots of questions, to help the client make their own discoveries and find their own power and their own way forward, so that by the end of the session, you're then able to say, well, okay, once this happens and I'm doing this, it's going to be, really helping me to get a lot closer to the outcomes. So it's really a really exciting and lovely part about coaching, that it often ends on that note of hope and a bit of a plan to take forward, and some things that can be put in place for the rest of life. And then you're almost like you're visualising and then rehearsing that for the future. So, I've had stories where I've had a client who I was helping he was going for job interviews. And so we're working on that very specific thing as to how he puts his best presentation in an interview. So we talked about what he'd like to be doing, and he'd like to be quite confident and be able to be presenting and communicating in a good way, and he was saying that at the moment he didn't feel he was able to do that. So we put some strategies in place and we practiced and rehearsed that. And then I was asking him, say, okay, when you're going for the interview, how are you going to be using those strategies there, and how good will it feel to be able to put that into place? And he was able to then really look forward to the interview in a much more hopeful and empowered way, because it almost, from us talking it through, he was then able to
like visualize it.
Visualize it, yeah, and that's a way that a lot of sports people.
Yes, it's much more positive, because I think when people go for counselling, it's more like problem focused. What are the barriers and what all the problems, and probably build more negative neurons than positive neurons.
Yeah, and I think sometimes we do often, by default, we often have very negative or thoughts that we won't be able to do something, or because we haven't done something in the past, we'll never be able to meet this challenge. And part of the job of good coaching is to show that there are different ways to think about things, and a challenge can be seen in a way that it's about using strength that you've got, and with some different strategies in place, and a bit of appreciation too of what that stretch will bring, almost.
Yes, has there been like research or information or anecdotes on people who've benefited from Life Coach?
Yeah, there is a lot of research happening now, a bit more than before. People can go to the International Coach Federation website, or there's type in coachfederation.org, and that's actually, they'll be able to see some research and some stories.
I've benefited a lot from life coaching. I used to go a lot to counsellors, but I found life coaching helped me to see a positive side to my life, or to the story of my life. How other ways do clients benefit from life coaching?
I think what a lot of people report is a greater sense of clarity as to about what their situation is, and about what they are doing, and then what they can do differently. That's often a great way of being able to talk about a situation with somebody, and that's why it's good to do that with somebody else who's not involved in the particular situation. So it's getting that sense of clarity. Another one is that's done in a safe space. That's where the person is encouraged to open up and to explore. And thirdly, I think having that sense of appreciation and gratitude, and just awareness of what it is that you're doing right in a situation. Because good coaching focuses on building up the strengths that are occurring well. And really, it's not much about correcting weaknesses or about not doing things that are wrong, but about really, look, what are you doing? As I say, catch them doing something good and then build on that. So that's part of why you do leave on such a high in the end, because you think, yeah, this is what I'm doing well.
That's fantastic. And what do people do if we want to know more, about getting a life coach, perhaps?
Well, several ways. You can Google life coach, or if you're in Australia and you might be wanting to work with a coach, there's a website where there are coaches available who are trained and who can contact you about that, and you can find that on www.lifecoachfinder.com.au, all one word.
Yep.
Or just go on the web.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for being on the show. It's been a wonderful time having you share.
Thank you. It's really been a pleasure coming on and talking with you, Geraldine.
You've been watching Spirit of Life. Join us again next week. Goodbye, and God bless you.